And so again, good morning and welcome everybody. So I want to tell you a little story about this little old man who one night was feeling kind of lonely. So he decided he was going to go out and get himself a pet. Now, he walks into the pet store and he decided that he didn't want just any pet. He wanted something unique, something exotic. So he tells the pet store owner, I want the most unique, different, and exotic pet that you have. And so the guy thought and says, well, the only thing that we have that's really unique and different, exotic is a centipede. And he goes, I'll take it. And so he takes his little box in hand and he heads home, and he's got the box fur and he's feeding and taking care of the centipede, and after a couple days he decides he wants to go out on the town. And then he decides he doesn't have to do it alone, he's going to take his new pet with him. So he opens up the lid and says, Mr. Centipede, would you like to go out on the town with me tonight? And he waits a minute or two and leans in a little closer to the box and says, Mr. Centipede, would you like to go out on the town with me tonight? Waits another minute or two, finally leans in really, really close to the box and he yells, Mr. Centipede, would you like to go out on the town with me tonight? And right about that moment, he hears this soft little voice that says, I already told you yes, be patient. I'm putting on my shoes. So this time of the year has always been filled with lessons around patience for me, whether it was waiting for the potatoes and the gravy to come around the table, or waiting for family members to arrive, waiting in line at the store and shopping for presents, or waiting to find out what's in the box under the tree. There's always been wonderful opportunities to really develop the skill of patience. It really is that, isn't it? We're not born patient. This is obvious in our kids. It's something that we learn over time. It's a skill that we develop and cultivate. In the Zen tradition, they don't use the word patience. They use the word constancy. Instead of patience, constancy is a kind of dedication to that which is sacred, a dedication to love, to understanding, a dedication to the practice and to what we care about. And with that dedication comes a trust that by planting beautiful seeds, eventually, in their own time, they will bear fruit. However, I am going to use the word patience today for our practice because it's one that we are all most familiar with. In the Buddhist practice, patience is one of the 6 perfections or paramitas. This paramita is known as the Kshanti paramita. And in fact, you recognize it in our Prayer of Refuge that we recite each day. Generosity, ethics, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom. Patience is seen in the Buddhist practice as the most important of all, because without patience, the other practices will eventually fail. So we manifest or experience the daily practice of patience in many ways. We experience patience standing in line or waiting for an Amazon shipment to show up. We experience patience at a stoplight, or we practice patience in being with other people as we listen to an elderly person recite the same story again and again and again, or we practice patience in listening to a young child who wants to tell you a completely made up story. And all of these offer an opportunity to practice patience on one level. And it is a good practice. And all of these examples imply a certain quiet enduring, a tolerance, if you will, a non-fixing, or even a refraining, even a passivity. However, this is not the patience that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about a much deeper practice of patience. In fact, this patience, and the reason why it is revered amongst the 6 paramitas as the most important of all, is because this practice of patience that I'm talking about is a powerful practice and a doorway to awakening. The deeper teaching of patience is to be present with hardship and with difficulty, but to do so actively. There is nothing passive about it. The deeper teaching, or even the perfection of patience, is transformative. You see, it is natural to turn away in the face of difficulty, in the face of pain and hardship. We want to go somewhere else. We want to be someone else. We want to think something else. We distract. We deny. We blame. We create stories. We rush around and get super busy with attempts to fix. The practice of patience, the deeper practice, asks us to do the exact opposite of all of that. It asks us to sit in the fire, to turn towards the problem, to embrace pain. As one of our teachers here, Robert Brummett, has often said, what's in the way is the way. So how should we practice patience? We begin by starting small. The perfection of patience proceeds by familiarity. We start with something manageable, and we work our way up to the larger, more difficult experiences. And I want to caution you not to produce deeper, more difficult suffering just to have the opportunity to practice. Believe me, life will provide us each and every day with opportunities to practice, whether on a tiny momentary level, whether it's an itch, to take a moment and notice before we quickly react to fixing the problem. Just notice, even an itch is a moment of suffering that we can take and practice a second of patience and just being aware of it. Moving up to practicing patience with some of the things that I mentioned earlier. Mundane things, stoplights, or working with the child that's constantly badgering about something. Breathing, putting space around these things. But we move up to larger things. Personal hardships, physical pain, being with difficulty, all the way up to disaster. So let's unpack these 4 things. Take a look at them, and how is it that we can incorporate the practice? How is it that we can find refuge in the 3 jewels, in these 4 areas of difficulty, personal hardship, physical pain, and disaster. So number 1, being with difficulty. It is natural to turn towards blame when there is difficulty. The blame then moves to anger, which we all recognize as the action arm of fear. It moves us to do something, to take action in the face of difficulty. Let and allow your practice to put space around that anger. Yes, an experience has happened. A difficulty has presented itself, but very quickly we move to anger. Let your practice put space around the anger, around the emotion, and allow the anger to first be present in awareness. And then, with curiosity, our practice moves us to investigate, how does anger manifest in this body that has been given this name? And as we purify the anger, this opportunity to be present expands, and suddenly there is presence. And then as we are moved to take action, we can do so with clarity and an open and pure heart. As Eckhart Tolle reminds us, it's not what we do, it is the quality of the doing. And so we respond to the situation. And for the purpose of assigning blame, in other words, we notice that if responding to a person or an organization or to a thing, if we can respond to that, and if responding to that thing is helpful, then we simply do so. So it's a gentle, more expansive and clear way of assigning blame. We simply notice in what way do we respond. Do we respond to a person, an organization, or a thing? And we can do so with an open heart. As Shanti Deva reminds us, if you cannot change a situation, then what is the point of getting upset and angry? If you, however, can respond to a situation, again, what is the point of getting upset and angry? This is even reflected in the Serenity Prayer. The knowledge of knowing what you can change and what you cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. So let's move next to personal hardship. When an experience intensifies and something becomes very, very painful, the Bodhisattva practice expands the nature of suffering through awareness and acts of imagination. What does that mean? The Bodhisattva practice responds with awareness and acts of imagination. The first step is awareness and the recognition that there is suffering that is occurring within the body. Yeah, wow, I'm in it. The body is in it. The body is feeling pain. The body is experiencing fear, jealousy, rage, loneliness, sadness, despair. What is it that has arisen in the body? And when we are patient with our suffering, rather than lamenting it and telling every single person that we meet, when we are present with it, it connects us warmly to the world and to others. Awareness of the suffering connects us to the world and to others by realizing that it is not solely our suffering, my suffering. When suffering becomes the suffering of mankind instead of mine, it's not suffering. When my sorrow, grief, or fear, and we recognize it as being painful, yet it is also sweet because I share it with all of mankind. This is how Bodhisattva understands the third noble truth of Buddha, of the four noble path, of the Four Noble Truths, This is how the Bodhisattva recognizes the third of the noble path. The end of suffering is by ending suffering, we do not mean the end of physical pain, failure, loss, alienation, fear, or other forms of suffering, but rather by transforming suffering into solidarity and love. Let's take a look at physical pain. Working with pain in meditation can be a way to develop patience. When physical pain arises in meditation, we stay with the breath. And this can be a very powerful practice and a doorway to awakening, because as the body experiences physical pain, a very deep contrast develops, because we become aware of pain in the body, and at the same time, can you become aware of the one who knows that the body is experiencing pain. The pain itself can really provide a deep contrast and really help us to see that we are aware that pain is in the body. Then we become aware of who is aware of that. And then the awareness doesn't feel pain. It is simply aware that pain is in the body. And we have a body, but we are not our body. We have feelings and emotions, but we are not our feelings and emotions. And we have thoughts, but we are not our thoughts. Who we really are is awareness and consciousness. Pain in the body can be a very powerful practice that really exemplifies and accentuates that awareness of who we really are. Because now I can become aware of the pain, and I can become aware of the awareness. Now, I'm not saying that we don't take action by addressing a person, organization, or a thing. We don't take action. It's not that we don't take action with pain. Yes, if necessary, we will take a medication that has been prescribed to us by our doctor. But we can be patient with it and explore it, open to what is there, instead of that knee-jerk reaction to blame, that knee-jerk reaction to scratching the itch or taking the medication. We can put space around it and cultivate patience. And in doing so, presence, openness, and a vastness becomes available to us. And finally, let's take a look at disaster. We're certainly in a time right now with the pandemic, tremendous suffering all around us, economic collapse, environmental collapse. We're certainly in a time now where the practice of patience almost seems counterintuitive. I have people tell me, there's too much going on right now for me to meditate. I'm out of a job. I've got to focus on getting a job, on making money. I've got to focus on volunteering for these, to be of service for these environmental concerns. All of these things that suddenly the practice needs to be set aside. But this is exactly the time when our practice should be on the front, on the foremost, when it is most important. When things are fine and great and dandy, oh yeah, now I got lots of time to practice, everything's good. But it is now, when we are faced with disasters all around us, that our practice becomes the most important. Because see, when you truly understand the purpose of suffering, to wake us up, to realize the true nature of who we are, you understand that suffering is not a bad thing. It is a part of life. It is a part of waking up. It is a part of evolution, of the evolution of our souls. And so instead of bringing blame, judgment, a desperate need to react, we bring compassion. And it's not passive. It is an awareness, an awakening, and a willingness to set in the fire. It is a willingness to shine our light and see the light in others when they cannot. The people who aren't wearing masks, the people who we sometimes get so angry with. It is bringing an awareness, an awakening that there is something that is driving them, that there is a fear there that is driving them to behave in a certain way. And so we bring compassion and understanding. It's not that we don't offer a mask to someone who's not wearing it, but we do so not out of anger. We do so out of love. Practicing compassion doesn't mean acquiescing when harm is done. No bodhisattva would stand by while some act of anger is being purposed or being perpetrated upon someone right in front of you. The bodhisattva can be fierce, but force is avoided, if at all possible, and in favor of a gentler method that stands even a slight chance of working, then we will use that. Even where forceful methods seem necessary, they are applied without anger or hatred, but rather with compassion, strength, and an eye to eventual healing as soon as the conflict abates. There is a trust that the seeds planted, the beautiful seeds of love and understanding and compassion, will eventually bear fruit. So the invitation today is to be present through the techniques of practicing Tonglen, metta practice or loving kindness practice, of understanding the purpose of suffering, to compassion for individuals who are caught in the grips of fear, judgmentalism, anger. We instead stop looking for the world to change and realize that it is we that are the beacons of light and hope and change in the world. So I want to close with a poem by Mark Nepo. The leaves do what we cannot. They wait their whole lives. At first they dream of air and wait to slip from wood. Then they dream of openness and wait to stretch in light. Next, they dream of thirst and wait to soften in the rain. At last, they dream of nothing and simply unfurl in the moment. The mystery of waiting is what turns light into food. To wait beyond what we think we can bear is how things within turn sweet.